Laura Davis was a beloved personal trainer and social media influencer, known for her vibrant spirit and adventurous hikes. But one sunny afternoon, while hiking alone in Glacier National Park, she mysteriously vanished without a trace. Despite extensive searches, authorities found no clues until 3 months later, when a seasoned park ranger stumbled upon a chilling discovery deep within the forest. Laura Davis was the kind of woman who effortlessly drew people into her world. At 29 years old, she radiated an infectious energy that captured hearts and inspired minds. A successful personal trainer and fitness influencer from Chicago, her days started before sunrise. Every morning, she filled her small, brightly lit apartment with motivational affirmations, preparing nutritious meals while streaming upbeat playlists to her thousands of followers on Instagram. People loved Laura. They admired her dedication, positivity, and unshakable enthusiasm for life. Her online community eagerly awaited each new post, finding inspiration in her journey from overcoming a teenage eating disorder to becoming a strong, empowered fitness coach. She shared everything from sweaty workouts to serene moments hiking remote trails. Nature was Laura's sacred place, her refuge from the digital noise that had become both her life and livelihood. In early June 2023, Laura announced her most anticipated adventure yet: Glacier National Park in Montana. Her followers immediately filled the comments with excitement and advice, cautioning her about the beautiful yet perilous wilderness she was about to enter, particularly emphasizing sightings of grizzly bears at that time of year. Laura, however, saw only the beauty and the challenge, brushing off the warnings with cheerful optimism. The morning of June 14th dawned clear and warm. Glacier National Park stretched out majestically before Laura, its snow-capped peaks glistening beneath a vibrant blue sky. Towering pines and dense emerald forests covered the vast landscape, punctuated by pristine lakes and wildflower-filled meadows. But beyond the breathtaking scenery lurked hidden dangers, powerful currents, unstable terrain, and the ever-present possibility of encountering wildlife, notably grizzly bears, feared yet revered symbols of the park's wild heart. At 9 a.m., Laura stood at the trailhead of Swift Current Pass, her excitement palpable. She adjusted her bright pink backpack, meticulously packed with essentials: protein bars, water, a small first aid kit, bear spray, and a compact tripod for selfies. Laura took a deep breath of crisp mountain air, absorbing the peaceful silence around her. With practiced ease, she raised her phone, snapped a vibrant selfie showing her wide, radiant smile, and quickly uploaded it, captioning it simply, "Embracing Adventure. See you on the other side." The response was immediate. Likes and comments poured in, wishing her luck, cheering her bravery. Laura smiled warmly at her screen one last time before switching the phone to airplane mode, tucking it safely away and stepping confidently onto the rugged trail. The Swift Current Pass beckoned ahead, weaving into dense woodland and gradually ascending toward breathtaking vistas she dreamed of for months. As she hiked deeper into the trail, the sounds of civilization faded away, replaced by birdsong and the gentle rustling of leaves. Her footsteps crunched rhythmically over gravel and soft forest soil. The sunlight filtering through the branches warmed her skin, creating dancing patterns on the forest floor. Time dissolved into a serene blur of motion and nature, carrying Laura further from the safety of familiar paths. Hours passed unnoticed. Laura paused briefly by a clear, cold stream, enjoying the solitude and serenity. She checked her watch, 3 p.m., and considered briefly heading back. But the trail's beauty was seductive, each new turn revealing vistas even more stunning than before. Determined, she pressed onward. As daylight softened into twilight, clouds began gathering overhead, casting shadows across the path. Laura quickened her pace, aware she needed to return before dark. The forest, previously welcoming, now felt subtly ominous. She glanced back occasionally, the tranquility broken by an irrational feeling of being watched. Ignoring her unease, she hurried forward, reassured by her physical strength and preparedness. Nightfall arrived swiftly, cloaking the wilderness in darkness. Laura's family, alarmed by her uncharacteristic lack of updates, contacted park authorities. Ranger Ethan Carter received the report around 9:30 p.m., his radio crackling urgently in his small, rustic ranger station near Lake McDonald. Ethan, at 47, was a quiet and reserved man, respected by his peers for his meticulous dedication to safety. He knew firsthand the unforgiving nature of the wilderness. His wife had perished 6 years earlier on a similar trail, a tragedy he carried silently. He took each disappearance personally, haunted by the thought of someone else's loved ones. Enduring the same agony he'd known, gathering a small team, Ethan immediately launched a search along Swiftcurrent Pass. Flashlights pierced the inky darkness, beams scattering through thick underbrush as their voices echoed, calling Laura's name. Hours passed fruitlessly. They found no footprints, no signs of distress, only silence and the distant murmurs of wildlife moving unseen through the trees dotted dawn. Exhausted but relentless, Ethan retraced Laura's steps from her last known location. The cheerful selfie Laura posted hours earlier served as a stark reminder of how quickly serenity could shatter into mystery. Ethan carefully examined the surroundings, his practiced eyes scanning the forest floor and nearby shrubs. Then, something caught his attention, a faint, unnatural disturbance in the vegetation beside the path. Kneeling, Ethan inspected closely. Broken twigs, crushed leaves, subtle yet unmistakable signs someone had moved hastily off trail, possibly under duress. Ethan's pulse quickened slightly. This wasn't the typical behavior of someone who simply got lost. As the morning sun filtered softly through the branches, Ethan followed the faint trail into a small clearing. There, partially concealed beneath fallen leaves and twigs, lay an empty energy bar wrapper identical to those Laura carried in her backpack. Nearby, pressed into the mud, were faint, incomplete boot prints. Ethan frowned deeply. Next to them was another print, different, heavier, larger, and distinctly masculine. Heart pounding, Ethan stood slowly, taking in his surroundings. The unsettling realization settled heavily in his gut. This wasn't a simple case of someone losing their way or encountering wildlife. Someone else had been here. Someone who likely crossed paths with Laura. He retrieved his worn notebook, jotting down meticulous details of the scene, the wrapper's location, boot size, estimated time of disturbance. As he wrote, Ethan's mind raced, haunted by questions, without answers. Who else was out here with Laura? Was she taken, or had something worse transpired? The evidence was confusingly sparse, yet clearly indicated human presence, a fact that intensified the dread within him. Ethan stood silently in the clearing, the tranquility around him now deeply unsettling. Every rustle, every distant bird call seemed amplified, charged with ominous potential. Laura's cheerful selfie lingered vividly in his thoughts, a stark contrast to the grim uncertainty that now hung over the park. Drawing a deep breath, Ethan stared down at the incomplete tracks, his gaze narrowing with determination and unease. This was no longer just another missing hiker. This had become something darker, more complex, something Ethan couldn't yet fully grasp. He knew one thing clearly. Though Laura Davis had encountered someone or something that interrupted her journey in a troubling way. As the sunlight strengthened, casting stark shadows across Ethan's face, he felt the heavy weight of responsibility settle firmly on his shoulders. the peaceful beauty of Glacier National Park. Usually Ethan's solace suddenly felt oppressive and foreboding. His investigation was just beginning, yet already it felt dauntingly personal. Glancing once more at the faint, confusing clues before him, Ethan felt an unfamiliar pang of doubt. Whatever happened to Laura Davis was more than an accident. It was a puzzle that would challenge everything. Ethan thought he knew about the wilderness he'd devoted his life to protecting. The answers were out there, hidden in shadows Ethan couldn't yet penetrate. As he turned reluctantly away from the unsettling scene, he knew this was only the first step in a long, uncertain journey toward discovering the truth about Laura's final selfie. Morning sunlight poured over Glacier National Park, bathing the rugged landscape in hues of gold and green. Yet, the usual beauty of the park felt overshadowed by a tense and restless energy. Laura Davis had now been missing for nearly 24 hours, and every minute that passed without answers intensified the urgency among search teams. Police vehicles lined the entrance to the Swift Current Pass trailhead, their flashing lights casting erratic bursts of red and blue onto the dense foliage. Uniformed officers combed methodically through the thick underbrush, their radios crackling with intermittent updates. Dogs strained against leashes, noses pressed low, searching desperately for the scent of the missing woman. Helicopters buzzed overhead, their blades slicing through the quiet morning air as search crews scanned tirelessly from above. Detective Alex Murphy, a seasoned officer with weary eyes and an authoritative stance, stood near his cruiser, observing the coordinated efforts. He'd seen countless missing person cases before, many resolved quickly, others tragically not. Still, he couldn't shake the unease gnawing at his gut about this particular disappearance. Laura was fit, experienced, and prepared. Her sudden disappearance defied logic. Hours turned into days, and despite rigorous searches and public pleas for information, the investigation yielded nothing concrete. Interviews with dozens of tourists and park visitors led nowhere, filled with vague recollections and uncertain timelines. No witnesses saw anything suspicious, and security footage at the park entrances revealed nothing unusual. Laura Davis had seemingly vanished without a trace. Throughout the fruitless search, Ethan Carter remained a constant presence, quiet, observant, almost invisible amidst the bustling police activity. He hovered near the perimeter of their searches, notebook in hand, meticulously documenting every detail, every inconsistency. His mind continually replayed the faint boot prints he had found near Laura's last known location, prints suspiciously dismissed by police as irrelevant due to lack of clear evidence. For Ethan, the situation felt agonizingly personal. 6 years earlier, his wife, Sarah, had set off on a solitary hike, promising him a swift return before dinner. But hours turned to days, and Sarah was never seen alive again. Her remains were discovered weeks later, having fallen from a steep trail, a tragic accident, authorities concluded. But Ethan had always felt responsible, burdened by guilt that if he'd paid closer attention, she might still be alive. Ever since, each new disappearance felt like a painful echo of that loss, driving him to relentless vigilance. As days dragged into weeks without new leads, the official investigation gradually scaled down. Hope waned, and theories shifted grimly toward an animal attack, despite no solid evidence to support this. Bears, especially grizzlies, were frequent scapegoats in unresolved cases. It provided closure, albeit unsatisfying, to authorities eager to move on. But Ethan refused to accept such easy explanations. During the diminishing official searches, he continued quietly exploring on his own, driven by an instinct deeper than evidence alone. He retraced every step Laura might have taken, revisited every possible route, searching tirelessly for any overlooked detail. One cool morning, nearly 3 weeks after Lara vanished, Ethan set off toward a more remote part of Swiftcurrent Pass, guided by intuition and experience. His old hiking boots crunched softly on gravel and dry leaves as he moved silently through the woods, eyes scanning for anything out of place. Suddenly, his steps faltered, senses on high alert. Through a narrow gap in dense branches, he caught sight of something vibrant, unnatural, a splash of bright pink. Heart pounding, Ethan cautiously approached, slowly emerging into a clearing. There, suspended bizarrely from a thick branch high above the ground, was Laura's unmistakable pink backpack. The same pack she'd proudly displayed in her final selfie, vibrant and untouched, as if deliberately placed. Below it, pacing restlessly, in wide circles, was a massive grizzly bear, its muscular frame radiating power, each step heavy and deliberate. Ethan watched from the safety of nearby bushes, heart racing with adrenaline. The bear seemed agitated, yet unaware of Ethan's presence, drawn inexplicably to the dangling backpack. After what felt like an eternity, the bear finally lumbered off into deeper woodland, allowing Ethan to carefully retrieve the pack. Inside, he discovered Laura's belongings: perfectly intact energy bars, bear spray, phone battery now dead, but no signs of a struggle or attack. This clearly wasn't an animal encounter. The scene felt staged, unsettlingly intentional. Ethan hurriedly contacted Detective Murphy, reporting his discovery. Within the hour, officers swarmed the area, assessing the scene skeptically. But Murphy's initial intrigue quickly turned to skepticism. He glanced at Ethan doubtfully. "Probably the bear took it," Murphy suggested, shaking his head dismissively. "It's common for animals to drag things around. They're curious creatures." "It wasn't dragged," Ethan insisted firmly, frustration bubbling beneath his calm exterior. "It was carefully hung, Detective. Bears don't do that." Murphy sighed heavily, gesturing at his exhausted team. "Ethan, look, we appreciate your dedication, but sometimes cases just end this way. The wilderness is unpredictable, brutal. Everything here points to wildlife interference." Ethan's eyes darkened, and he spoke in a controlled but tense tone. Lara was strong, trained, and cautious. She knew how to handle herself. This isn't just some unfortunate accident. Detective Murphy softened slightly, but shook his head again. "Unless we have clear evidence otherwise, there's nothing further we can pursue officially. I'm sorry, Ethan." Hours later, back at his modest cabin, Ethan sat heavily at his worn wooden table, the pink backpack lying open before him, a stark reminder of unanswered questions. Outside, twilight cast long shadows through the trees, bathing the room in pale, melancholy hues. The police had officially closed Laura's case, labeling it an animal attack presumed, but Ethan knew better. Something sinister lingered beneath the surface, something the authorities refused to acknowledge. He stared intensely at the neat rows of notes spread across the table, details meticulously logged in his battered old notebook, sketches of footprints, timelines, descriptions of every minor anomaly encountered. Images of Sarah flickered vividly. In Ethan's memory, her radiant smile mirrored hauntingly in Laura's final selfie. The similarity was painful, amplifying his resolve. This wasn't just about solving Laura's disappearance. It was about redemption, about preventing another life from being reduced to a mere statistic, another unsolved mystery overshadowed by nature's convenient cruelty. Ethan drew a deep breath, determination hardening his features. If the police refused to look deeper, he would continue the search alone. He knew the land intimately, understood the forest's secrets better than anyone. Lara deserved more than an easy explanation. She deserved someone who refused to give. Outside, the sky darkened further, the sounds of the wilderness growing louder and more intense. Ethan gathered his notes, placing the notebook securely in his jacket pocket. He stood decisively, glancing one last time at Laura's abandoned backpack, vibrant and defiant against the dim evening light. "I'll find you," Ethan whispered quietly, speaking both to Laura's lingering presence and the memory of Sarah. "Whatever it takes, I promise. I'll find you." With that solemn vow echoing through the silence, Ethan stepped out into the gathering darkness, resolved to uncover the hidden truth, no matter how dangerous or painful the journey might become. His private investigation had officially begun. Ethan Carter's private investigation began quietly, like the first cautious steps on a frozen lake, each move testing the fragile surface beneath. For days, he retraced Laura's route meticulously, searching for subtle signs police had overlooked, all while battling his own restless thoughts. Each silent moment in the dense forest brought vivid memories of Sarah, of past searches, past losses, and past failures. He questioned everyone he encountered, tourists, hikers, and park staff alike. Most offered sympathetic shakes of the head, murmuring their sorrow, but providing nothing useful. Ethan's careful notes filled the pages of his worn notebook, small details recorded obsessively, desperately hoping they might somehow form a clearer picture. One afternoon, beneath a moody, gray sky, Ethan encountered old Jerry, a park volunteer and amateur birdwatcher, near a remote overlook. Jerry, nearly 80 but sharp-eyed, had spent decades memorizing every trail and hidden pathway. "You sure you're looking in the right places, Ethan?" Jerry asked gently, adjusting his worn binoculars. "Trails aren't the only ways through this park. Animals, and sometimes people, prefer less obvious routes." Ethan frowned thoughtfully. "What do you mean, Jerry?" The old man leaned closer, voice lowering instinctively. "Near Many Glacier, there's a hidden path through the trees, barely noticeable. I used to see people using it years ago, not so much these days. Maybe worth checking." Heart racing with a newfound sense of urgency, Ethan thanked Jerry and immediately moved toward the described area. Each step deeper into the dense wilderness heightened his tension. He carefully brushed aside overgrown branches and vines, noting disturbed earth beneath. Someone had indeed passed here recently. His pulse quickened. He felt he was finally onto something substantial, after half an hour navigating nearly impassable terrain. Ethan stumbled into a small, secluded clearing, hidden by thick evergreens. At its center stood a dilapidated wooden cabin, half consumed by nature, its windows shattered and walls cloaked in ivy. His stomach tightened uneasily as he approached. The door creaked open with minimal pressure, revealing the cabin's shadowy interior. Inside, the air felt oppressive, musty with abandonment and something darker, more sinister. Ethan stepped cautiously forward, heart pounding as his eyes adjusted to the dimness. The walls were cluttered with faded photographs, hastily pinned, faces peering at him from the gloom. His breath caught sharply. Among them, prominently displayed, was Laura Davis. Beside her, other young women smiled uncertainly from dusty frames, faces he didn't recognize but immediately understood represented other unsolved disappearances. Ethan felt sick, the room spinning momentarily. Each smiling portrait felt accusatory, a silent scream of neglected justice. He steadied himself, taking deep breaths, forcing down nausea and fear. This was no animal attack. This was deliberate, calculated, human cruelty. Across the room, a small wooden desk stood beneath a window. Ethan carefully approached, noticing charred edges of a leather-bound notebook resting atop it. He gently lifted the damaged diary, carefully flipping through pages filled with faded handwriting, burned and partially legible. Yet fragments of the entries sent chills crawling down his spine. Subject number 3 displayed remarkable resilience, lasted longer than anticipated. Survival instincts fascinating under controlled duress. We'll begin observation of the new subject. Fitness. Trainer, robust and mentally strong Laura Davis. Ethan felt bile rising again, disgusted and deeply unsettled. These were not random acts. Someone meticulously planned and executed horrific tests, treating victims as little more than subjects for twisted experimentation. His mind raced as he pocketed the diary carefully, knowing this might hold crucial clues for later analysis. Then, suddenly, an intense prickling sensation gripped Ethan, an undeniable certainty of being watched. He spun sharply, eyes darting to windows, shadows, doorways. Nothing. Yet the feeling persisted, an oppressive presence just beyond sight. Studying his every move, heart hammering wildly, Ethan backed slowly toward the door, senses on high alert. Every muscle tensed instinctively, adrenaline surging through his veins. He emerged cautiously from the cabin, eyes scanning the thick foliage surrounding the clearing. "Who's there?" he called out, voice steady but authoritative. Silence replied, a deep, unnatural quiet that made Ethan's pulse thrum louder in his ears. He forced himself to remain calm, retreating slowly toward the hidden path he'd entered. Shadows moved ominously in his peripheral vision, the forest itself seeming to breathe and pulse with hidden menace. Ethan's instincts screamed danger, his every nerve alive and vigilant. Suddenly, from somewhere behind him, came the sharp snap of a breaking twig. Ethan froze, heart thundering. He turned slowly, eyes narrowing, but saw only dense foliage swaying gently in the wind. A second crack, louder, closer. "Show yourself," Ethan shouted again, voice tinged with defiance. Still, no response, only the maddening rustle of unseen movement. Determined to leave the unsettling clearing, Ethan stepped quickly back onto the barely visible trail. His thoughts raced frantically. He needed to alert someone immediately, but who? The police had already dismissed him. He'd have to confront them again, make them see. Ethan's breathing quickened as he moved hurriedly down the path. Every instinct told him he wasn't alone, that whoever watched him inside the cabin now stalked him silently through the dense woods. Suddenly, without warning, a heavy blow slammed into Ethan's back, sending him sprawling face first onto the forest floor. His breath exploded painfully from his lungs, senses spinning chaotically as he struggled to comprehend the attack. Ethan rolled over desperately, dirt and leaves clinging to his sweaty skin, just in time to see a shadowy figure looming over him, masked and utterly silent. Before Ethan could react, the attacker lunged, powerful hands gripping Ethan's throat, attempting to silence him permanently. Ethan fought frantically, heart pounding wildly, vision blurring as panic surged. He clawed desperately, fingers scraping against rough fabric, but his attacker held firm, summoning all his remaining strength. Ethan drove his knee upward, connecting solidly with his attacker's stomach. The masked figure grunted sharply, loosening his grip just enough for Ethan to wrench himself free. Gasping raggedly for air, Ethan scrambled backwards, eyes locked on the menacing stranger whose identity remained hidden behind the eerie, expressionless mask. For a brief moment, the two figures faced each other, breathing heavily, tension crackling electrically between them. Ethan saw cold, ruthless determination behind the mask's shadowy eye holes, a chilling, calculated malice. Then, without another word, the figure turned abruptly and fled, melting seamlessly into the surrounding wilderness. Ethan remained frozen, gasping for breath, adrenaline still surging powerfully through his trembling body. Slowly, painfully, Ethan staggered to his feet, muscles aching, throat raw. His mind reeled with confusion, fear, and an intensified determination. He knew with terrifying clarity that he had narrowly escaped death, and that the masked figure was undoubtedly linked to Laura's disappearance, to the cabin, and to the twisted notes in the diary. Gritting his teeth, Ethan stood unsteadily, body still shaking from the brutal attack. The stakes had just escalated dramatically, the danger now vividly personal. He realized with grim certainty that he was no longer simply hunting for Laura Davis, he was also fighting for his own survival. And the hunter had just become the hunted. Ethan's first sensation upon waking was pain, a deep, throbbing ache radiating from his skull down his spine. He lay motionless on damp earth, disoriented, eyes struggling to focus through a haze of blurred shapes and shadows. Slowly, painfully, he lifted himself onto one elbow, groaning softly. The forest around him was eerily quiet, bathed in the dull, fading light of evening. Memories flooded back sharply. The hidden cabin, the masked attacker, the violent struggle. Ethan's breath quickened as panic surged anew, heart thumping unsteadily. In his chest, he gingerly touched his neck, wincing at the tender bruises beneath his fingertips, grim evidence of how close he'd come to death. As he staggered to his feet, waves of nausea forced him back to his knees. Fighting through dizziness, Ethan scanned the surrounding trees, every shadow now hiding potential danger. He understood clearly. He was no longer the investigator, but prey in a sinister game. His attacker, the masked figure, had intended to silence him permanently. Yet he'd escaped barely, and the threat still lurked nearby. Ethan slowly regained stability, leaning heavily against a tree as his breathing steadied. Gradually, his vision cleared, revealing the depth of his isolation. Darkness was descending, fast, amplifying his vulnerability. But more pressing than physical injuries was the profound unease twisting inside him. Whoever had attacked was methodical, cunning, and deadly serious. As Ethan painfully navigated his way back toward his cabin, his mind relentlessly dissected the assault. The attacker's strength, the silent precision, everything hinted at someone experienced, someone familiar with the wilderness, someone intimately acquainted with these woods. Someone like Mark Jenkins. Ethan froze at the thought, heart thundering. Painfully. Mark Jenkins, his former colleague and friend, a trusted partner during countless rescue missions. But Mark's sudden dismissal 3 years ago had been abrupt and unexplained. Ethan recalled vaguely the whispers among park staff, suspicions of improper conduct, unsettling comments about Mark's fascination with wilderness survival. Ethan had dismissed those rumors at the time, trusting Mark's outward professionalism and charm. Could he have been wrong? Doubt gnawed relentlessly at Ethan's mind. Mark's seemingly innocent comments, subtle questions about survival psychology, his fascination with missing persons cases, they now twisted ominously in Ethan's memory. Had Mark's dismissal been due to something darker, something covered up quietly to avoid scandal? Shaken, Ethan finally reached his cabin, locking the door firmly behind him. Under the dim glow of a lamp, he examined his bruised reflection in a dusty mirror. Eyes sunken, throat bruised, expression haunted. He barely recognized himself. The confident ranger was now haggard, vulnerable, hunted, unable to rest. Ethan retrieved the partially burned diary he'd taken from the cabin, leafing through it carefully, hoping for answers. The handwriting was sharp, familiar somehow, increasing his suspicion. Ethan's pulse quickened as phrases jumped out, references to survival experiments, detailed notes on victims' reactions to fear and isolation. Each entry matched perfectly the profile of someone obsessed with control, manipulation, and domination. His unease deepened. It all pointed disturbingly toward Mark, yet doubt persisted. Could Ethan accuse someone based purely on suspicion and Fragmented evidence? His past memories of Mark were of camaraderie, friendship, trust. Could a friend hide such profound darkness beneath a carefully constructed mask? Ethan wrestled with uncertainty throughout the sleepless night, tormented by the implications. By morning, exhausted but resolved, he decided to seek discreet help. He knew the official investigation was closed, but he still had one trusted ally inside the local police department, Officer Ben Mitchell. Ben had been his friend since childhood, a straightforward and practical man who always balanced Ethan's intense nature. They drifted apart professionally, but personal bonds remained strong. Ethan arrived unannounced at Ben's small home in the outskirts of town just after sunrise. Desperate and visibly shaken, Ben opened the door, startled by Ethan's disheveled appearance. "Jesus, Ethan, what happened to you?" Ethan collapsed onto Ben's couch, recounting every detail of Laura's disappearance, the hidden cabin, the violent attack, and his growing suspicions about Mark Jenkins. Ben listened intently, face growing increasingly grim. "I need your help, Ben," Ethan pleaded earnestly, eyes filled with desperation. "Officially, the case is closed. They won't listen." "But something's deeply wrong here." Ben hesitated, concern evident. "Ethan, if you're right about Mark, this is serious. But accusations like this need proof, real proof." Ethan produced the burned diary, handing it over solemnly. "This belonged to whoever took Laura. I found it near her." "Belongings. Check the handwriting. See if it matches Mark's files at the station." Quietly, Ben nodded slowly, finally relenting. "All right. I'll look into it, discreetly. But Ethan, be careful. If Mark really is involved, he's clearly dangerous." Ethan left Ben's home slightly relieved, yet acutely aware of the heightened stakes. His investigation was no longer secret. Someone already wanted him dead. Every step forward carried risk. Over the following days, Ethan combed the park with heightened caution, constantly aware of potential watchers. His physical wounds healed, but emotional scars lingered deeply. Yet the need for truth overrode personal fears, driving him forward relentlessly. One late afternoon, retracing again the route near Many Glacier, Ethan felt suddenly uneasy. The forest around him had fallen silent, an unnatural quietness raising the hairs on his neck. He stopped abruptly, eyes scanning warily, and there, glinting subtly in fading daylight, something metallic caught Ethan's eye. Heart racing, he approached cautiously, discovering a small hidden camera, meticulously camouflaged among branches, lens angled precisely toward the trail he'd just walked. Blood drained from Ethan's face as realization struck coldly. Mark, or whoever was behind this, had been monitoring him closely all along. Every move, every step, anticipated and observed. Ethan felt a profound, chilling sense of vulnerability. How many more cameras existed, hidden secretly throughout these woods? How deeply had Mark infiltrated Ethan's life, anticipating his every action? He stood frozen, heart thundering with dread. Mark Jenkins, the respected ranger he'd once trusted, had always been one step ahead. Ethan understood now with crystal clarity he wasn't simply hunting Mark. Mark was actively hunting him, orchestrating this twisted cat-and-mouse game with chilling precision. Ethan glanced anxiously around, feeling eyes he could no longer trust upon him from every shadow. He swallowed hard, gathering the remnants of his resolve. The investigation had taken a deeply personal and perilous turn, forcing him to confront disturbing truths about Mark, about himself, about the blurred lines between friendship and betrayal. Clenching his fists, Ethan carefully disconnected the hidden camera, knowing he had stumbled onto critical proof. But with this discovery came the bitter recognition of how vulnerable and exposed he truly was. The hunter had truly become the hunted, yet Ethan knew there was no turning back now. To end this nightmare, to find Laura and confront Mark, he had to keep moving forward, no matter how dangerous the path ahead. With a deep, steadying breath, Ethan pocketed the camera, eyes steeling with renewed determination. It was time to finally uncover the full truth before Mark Jenkins took everything from him once and for all. The discovery of the hidden camera shattered any remaining illusions Ethan Carter had about the scope of Mark Jenkins' sinister plan. This wasn't merely the work of a disturbed loner, it was a sophisticated operation meticulously designed to stalk, observe, and manipulate victims long before they realized the danger. On Ethan's skin prickled with dread as he held the tiny camera in his palm, understanding its silent implications. Mark was everywhere, always watching, always ahead. Over the following days, Ethan became obsessed with uncovering more cameras, driven by a compulsion to dismantle Mark's twisted surveillance network. He scoured the familiar trails tirelessly, examining every tree, shrub, and rock with heightened suspicion. His search quickly yielded chilling results: multiple hidden devices cleverly concealed in branches, camouflaged among foliage, each strategically placed to record unsuspecting hikers. Back at his cabin, late at night, Ethan examined the footage recovered from the cameras. The grainy black and white images revealed countless innocent hikers, unaware they were being watched. Disturbingly, some of these faces matched the missing persons reports Ethan had collected from nearby parks and towns. Each victim had been carefully selected, monitored, then abducted when most vulnerable. Ethan felt physically ill as he recognized Laura's bright figure among the footage. Clips showed her smiling, stopping for selfies, completely oblivious to her invisible observer. His chest tightened painfully as he saw the precise moment Laura unknowingly walked off camera for the last time straight into Mark's carefully laid trap. A fierce determination replaced Ethan's initial horror. He spread out maps of Glacier National Park on his table, worn and yellowed by years of use. His finger traced hidden trails, forgotten caves, and abandoned mines scattered throughout the vast wilderness, places only known to veteran rangers like himself. If Mark had secret hideouts, Ethan reasoned, they'd be located somewhere remote, concealed from the park's regular patrols. Ethan's search narrowed further as he remembered something from years earlier Mark had once mentioned: an old bunker near Lake McDonald, built decades ago as part of Cold War paranoia. The conversation had seemed trivial then, but now it felt profoundly significant. Ethan's gut tightened. He knew instinctively this bunker held answers. Meanwhile, fragments of Laura's suffering pierced Ethan's thoughts relentlessly, vivid flashes born from his anxious imagination and the sinister diary he'd discovered. His mind recreated scenes of Mark tormenting her psychologically, testing her resolve under unimaginable conditions. Yet, even within Ethan's darkest imaginings, Laura remained resilient, her willpower shining defiantly, refusing to be broken. One early morning, after barely sleeping, Ethan gathered essential supplies: flashlight, rope, knife, and his battered notebook filled with clues. He studied the maps intensely, pinpointing exactly where the bunker entrance might be hidden. Each line drawn, each note scribbled, brought him closer to confronting Mark and ending this nightmare once and for all. The trek to Lake McDonald was grueling, Ethan moving quietly through dense foliage, hyper-aware of every sound. Birds chirped gently above, oblivious to the sinister purpose driving Ethan forward. His heart thumped steadily, fueled by a potent mix of fear and determination. Near noon, Ethan finally arrived at the lakeshore, the water calm and deceptively serene beneath the cloudy sky. He moved slowly, eyes scanning the rocky shoreline. searching carefully for any unnatural formations, anything suggesting human interference. After hours of painstaking search, his persistence was rewarded. Partially hidden beneath thick roots and fallen branches, Ethan discovered a rusted metal hatch, nearly invisible in the forest floor. His breath quickened sharply. This was it, the entrance to Mark's secret lair. With effort, Ethan cleared away dirt and debris, revealing a heavy corroded door. Muscles straining, he forced it open, the metal groaning protestingly beneath his grip. The hatch finally yielded, swinging heavily to reveal narrow, stone steps descending sharply into darkness. Ethan paused, pulse racing uncontrollably, doubts gnawing at his confidence. But images of Lara, suffering alone in captivity, crushed hesitation instantly. Drawing a deep, steadying breath, he flicked on his flashlight and descended carefully, heart hammering painfully with each step downward. The air grew colder and heavier, musty with dampness and abandonment. Shadows danced eerily across rough stone walls, distorting reality. Ethan's every sense was alert, nerves taut with anticipation and dread. At the base of the stairs, a narrow passageway stretched ominously ahead, lined with old pipes and electrical cables from decades past. He moved slowly, cautiously, flashlight sweeping ahead, casting stark beams of illumination. Along the passageway, rusted doors lined both sides, most sealed shut, impassable. One door, slightly ajar, drew Ethan's attention. Approaching carefully, he pushed gently inward, revealing a small room filled with unsettling remnants, chains bolted to walls, empty food containers, scribbled tally marks indicating passage of days. Ethan shivered involuntarily. This had clearly been a holding cell. Suddenly, from deeper within the bunker, faint cries echoed weakly, barely audible. Ethan froze instantly, heart jolting sharply. Lavra! His pulse surged fiercely with urgency and hope. Without hesitation, he rushed forward, following the weak, desperate pleas through dark, twisting corridors, deeper underground. Finally, Ethan reached a heavy, reinforced door, securely locked. He rattled the handle desperately. Lavra! Lavra! Can you hear me? Ethan shouted urgently, voice echoing painfully through the silent bunker. Inside, barely audible, Laura's voice replied weakly, trembling yet unmistakably determined. Help, please. Ethan, he'll come back. Hurry. Ethan's chest tightened painfully with relief and urgency. Frantically, he searched the area for something to pry the door open, his flashlight shaking erratically in his grip. His desperation intensified, every second lost heightening danger. Finally, he found a rusted crowbar discarded near the wall, gripping it tightly as he leveraged all his strength against the lock. Metal groaned under immense pressure, finally snapping sharply. The door swinging open abruptly. Inside, Laura lay curled weakly on a filthy mattress, pale but unmistakably alive. Her eyes widened slightly upon recognizing Ethan, tears of relief filling them instantly. Ethan, it's a trap. Laura whispered weakly, her voice barely audible. Too late. A chilling realization struck Ethan sharply. Laura was bait. At that exact moment, heavy footsteps echoed from behind him, deliberate and methodical. Ethan spun around, heart plummeting into terror as Mark Jenkins stepped calmly into view, eyes coldly amused, lips curled into a dark smile. Ethan, finally found us, Mark said softly, voice smooth yet undeniably threatening. I knew you wouldn't disappoint. Ethan stood frozen, comprehension dawning brutally. He'd walked willingly, desperately into Mark's meticulously prepared ambush. Mark had anticipated Ethan's every move, predicting this exact moment. You were never supposed to be here, Ethan, Mark continued quietly, stepping closer. But Since you insisted on meddling, now you're part of the game." Behind Ethan, Lavra whimpered softly, trembling with renewed fear. Ethan's mind raced frantically, adrenaline surging uncontrollably. He'd failed to anticipate Mark's cunning completely, underestimated his ruthlessness. Mark's eyes glittered dangerously in the dim illumination. It's fascinating, isn't it? Seeing people stripped of everything, reduced to pure survival. Instincts. Lavra has shown incredible resilience. And now I wonder, will you? Ethan's fists clenched tightly, mind and body steeling with desperate resolve. He understood fully the perilous situation now facing them, both trapped deep underground, isolated, vulnerable. Yet beneath the overwhelming fear burned a fierce determination. Stronger than ever, he met Mark's gaze unflinchingly, voice steady, with quiet defiance. "This ends here, Mark. Whatever sick game you're playing, it's over." Mark smiled chillingly, stepping closer, eyes gleaming cruelly. "No, Ethan, it's only just beginning." Ethan braced himself, heart thundering violently. Knowing this confrontation would determine more than just his fate, it would decide Laura's survival and whether Mark's twisted horrors continued unchecked. The tension between them stretched unbearably taut, silent except for Laura's trembling breath behind him. Ethan stood resolute, prepared to fight with every ounce of strength remaining, aware this battle had become deeply personal. But even as Ethan faced Mark defiantly, deep inside he understood one chilling truth. He had no idea how he'd survive what was coming next. Mark Jenkins stepped slowly from the shadows into the dimly lit bunker, his calm expression disturbingly at odds with the horrifying situation. Ethan Carter stood protectively between Mark and Lavra, heart pounding violently, muscles tense with anticipation. The oppressive silence was only broken by the shallow breaths escaping Laura's trembling body. "You never could leave things alone, Ethan," Mark said softly, his voice eerily controlled. "Always playing the hero, even when it costs you." "Dearly, why are you doing this, Mark?" Ethan demanded, desperately trying to steady his voice to buy precious seconds. "These people, Laura, they trusted you. You were one of us." Mark's cold eyes narrowed, the shadowy bunker casting twisted, dancing reflections across his features. A faint smile curled his lips, void of warmth. Trust is precisely what makes this all possible. Survival isn't just about strength or training. It's about psychology, breaking through the illusions of safety, stripping everything away until only pure instinct remains. Ethan felt his stomach churn at Mark's chilling explanation. "You're insane," he whispered fiercely, keeping Mark engaged. Behind him, Lavra began subtly moving, struggling silently against her restraints. Unnoticed by Mark tilted his head slightly, studying Ethan as if he were merely a subject. "Not insane, enlightened. Our society coddles the weak, Ethan. Shelters people from reality. But here, in the wilderness, there are no illusions. Here, survival is truth, and fear is the ultimate test." Ethan shook his head, fists clenched tightly, anger burning deep within. "So you torture innocent people just to prove a point?" Mark laughed quietly, humorless and cold. "Torture? No, this is research and exploration of human resilience. Lavra has proven remarkable, pushing beyond limits I never anticipated. She's stronger than most, but even strength has its breaking point." Ethan felt rage surge violently through him, but kept his voice steady, determined to keep Mark talking. "She isn't some experiment. She's a human being, Mark. You have no right." "I have every right," Mark suddenly shouted, voice echoing harshly off the stone walls, losing control briefly. "I devoted years to studying survival psychology, only to be cast out because my methods frightened small minds. But here, underground, no one can interfere. Laura's endurance validates everything I've worked for. Ethan sensed Laura's movement behind him, heard the faint sounds of her struggling quietly free. His heart raced fiercely, knowing he had to maintain Mark's attention a moment longer. Your twisted obsession has cost lives, Mark, Ethan said, choosing each word carefully. You've hurt innocent people just to prove your theories. That isn't strength, it's cowardice. Mark stepped forward angrily, fists clenching dangerously. You know nothing about true strength, Ethan. You couldn't even save your own wife. The words cut deep, tearing open old wounds Ethan had long buried. A rush of grief and guilt threatened to overwhelm him, but he forced himself to remain focused, channeling that pain into resolve. You're right, Mark, Ethan said quietly, voice shaking slightly with controlled fury. I couldn't save Sarah, but I can still save Laura and stop you. Mark smirked cruelly. You can try. In that instant, Laura, harnessing every ounce of her remaining strength, lunged from behind Ethan, swinging the metal restraint that had held her. The heavy chain struck Mark violently across the side of his head, knocking him momentarily off balance. Ethan seized the opportunity, rushing forward, tackling Mark to the ground. Chaos erupted inside the confined space. Ethan grappled desperately with Mark, each blow fueled by adrenaline and determination. Mark fought back with manic intensity, his meticulous control replaced by raw, brutal rage. Laura, weakened but unyielding, threw herself into the struggle, helping Ethan pin Mark down, hands trembling as she fought to restrain him. Mark snarled fiercely, eyes wild, muscles straining violently beneath their grip. You can't stop this. You can't stop me. Mark roared furiously, eyes blazing with uncontrolled hatred. Ethan, driven by sheer desperation, landed a powerful blow to Mark's temple, rendering him dazed and momentarily helpless. Mark collapsed, breathing raggedly, his resistance finally spent. Ethan quickly restrained him tightly with the same chains Mark had used on Laura, securing his wrists firmly behind his back. Breathing heavily, Ethan turned to Laura, who now slumped, exhausted against the cold stone wall, eyes glassy but filled with immense relief. Ethan knelt beside her gently, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. You're safe now, he whispered hoarsely, emotion tightening his throat. Laura met his gaze weakly, tears spilling down her bruised face. Thank you. For never giving up. Minutes later, hurried footsteps echoed through the bunker's narrow corridors. Officer Ben Mitchell appeared first, flashlight cutting sharply through darkness, followed closely by a group of police officers, weapons drawn. Ben's team reaches the bunker just after Ethan subdues Mark Jenkins. Police arrest Mark. Medics rush Laura to safety, and Ben reassures a drained Ethan that he's finally saved someone. Months later, Laura shares a powerful survival message online while Ethan finds a measure of peace until a call about another pink backpack in the trees warns him the nightmare may not be over.